What's this?
Military medals. Personal belongings. I'm taking them to Arlington.
No. Hey, buddy, next time send your antiques first. This is not a museum.
Are you done?
You can go now.
He was just another elderly gentleman in a faded pilot's jacket. At least that's what the TSA officer muttered as he mocked the dented metal box in his hand. Souvenirs don't count as carry-on, the agent sneered, tossing the small box into the gray plastic bin like it was just some rusty old junk. The box rattled, flipped over, and popped open. Metal spilled across the conveyor belt like forgotten coins at a yard sale. No one moved. No one cared until 10 minutes later. The terminal fell silent, and the sound of uniformed shoes hitting the Polish tile floor echoed like thunder in a church. That old man, the one they'd all ignored, had once carried a nation on his back, and they'd tossed his legacy into the trash. If you believe honor can't be lost right at the gate, like and subscribe, because this isn't just a story, it's a reckoning. The man's name was William Harris, a retired artillery sergeant, 82 years old, lean and full of quiet pride. He walked with a limp that no cane could fix, and he wore his hearing aid not as a burden, but as a uniform no one asked him to remove. He moved slowly, but with purpose, a sharp edge beneath the brim of his old olive cap, embroidered with a patch most folks don't even recognize anymore. Recon Force Company C of the 2nd Marine Division at Southgate International Airport, still buzzing with its usual chaos. Suitcases, rolling kids, crying phones ringing, and amid it all, William waited patiently in the TSA line with just an old canvas bag, a manila folder holding his boarding pass, and that box, the metal one lined with velvet that still smelled of gun oil and desert sand. He was headed to a memorial ceremony in Washington, D.C., the final invitation to speak on behalf of his unit. This time, they wanted to hear from the ones still standing. But before William could even see the gate, even before he passed through the scanner, he was stopped by a badge, an agent barely out of training with mirrored sunglasses and a name tag reading Chad. Chad grumbled as William handed him the box. "What's this?" "A military award," William replied. "Personal item. I'm taking it to Arlington." "Can't do that," Chad muttered, opening it up. Inside was a Bronze Star, a Purple Heart, and 2 silver campaign medals from the Vietnam War and the Gulf War, each one nestled in velvet, tarnished by time, but unmistakably earned. Chad flipped the case over, and the medals tumbled into the bin with a clink of metal like loose change. One of them, his unit badge, custom-made in Saigon, rolled across the floor and stopped under a woman's stroller. William bent down stiffly, knees aching, and picked it up with a quiet groan. "Hey, buddy," Chad said loud enough for a few nearby folks to hear. "Next time, ship your antiques ahead of time. This isn't a museum." Laughter erupted from behind the screening counter. One of Chad's colleagues chuckled, elbowing him. "Maybe he bought it on eBay," William said. "Nothing to it. Just slide the metal back in and seal the lid carefully." "All done?" he asked. "You can go," Chad replied, waving him on without a second glance. A few people saw it, a few looked away, but one didn't. Her name was Emily Foster, a senior flight attendant on United Route 1875. She'd noticed William arrive, seen the precision in his every step, the calm in his stance, the way he scanned the terminal out of habit, not paranoia. She was standing in the priority line checking in the pilot when she saw what happened at the scanner. She didn't say anything then, but she made a call. And on the other end of that call wasn't a supervisor or PR department. It was someone who answered on the second ring and simply said, "Understood." Which gate? William sat alone near Gate 12 on a metal bench that no one wanted unless they had no other choice. His box was now sealed with a TSA inspection sticker, and he placed it gently on his lap like something sacred. Outside the window, a plane was taking off. Overhead, boarding announcements for another flight echoed like static. No one noticed him, just an old man with a box. The kind the world had decided didn't matter anymore. He didn't want special treatment. He didn't want points or perks. He just wanted to get to Arlington. But it seemed respect had to be earned all over again, even for those who'd given everything. Meanwhile, Chad was still at security, joking with another officer about confiscating a woman's perfume. He didn't see the message flashing on the DHS terminal. He didn't hear the polished shoes clicking on the marble. And he certainly didn't notice when 4 black SUVs rolled up to the runway entrance, breezing through security. No badges could replace it, but everyone else did, and heads turned as she walked in. Secretary of Defense Linda Barrett. No entourage, just sheer presence. Her eyes scanned the terminal, once locking immediately on the man at Gate 12. 10 minutes had passed, and the reckoning had arrived. The moment Secretary of Defense Linda Barrett stepped through the sliding glass doors of Terminal C, the air in the building shifted. At first, it was a subtle change, like a tingle on the skin before lightning strikes. She wasn't surrounded by security or TV cameras. She was there because someone had called about a man who deserved more than a smirk and a sticker on his legacy. Dressed in plain black civilian clothes, she strode with purpose across the hall, eyes fixed on Gate 12, and suddenly the chatter of conversations, the soft jazz overhead, and the constant announcements faded under the weight of her presence. No one needed to be told who she was. Those who didn't recognize her instinctively stood a little straighter, not knowing why. Passengers paused mid-step, parents pulled kids closer, and airport staff turned from their screens long enough to see Power walking quietly through the morning rush. At security, TSA officer Chad glanced up, confused by the sudden silence settling over the terminal like snow. He craned his neck, spotting a woman in black flanked by 3 sharply dressed officers, and scoffed. Someone must have missed their flight, he muttered as a supervisor's voice crackled through his earpiece. All personnel be advised. Senior Defense Department official entering Terminal C. Full cooperation. Do not engage unless instructed. Chad clenched his jaw. His colleague glanced over slowly, cautiously, as if to say, whatever's about to happen, it's not for us. Or at least, that's what he thought. Meanwhile, at Gate 12, William Harris hadn't budged. His back was straight, despite the stiffness in his spine, and the metal box rested on his lap like something too fragile for careless hands. He didn't notice the silence or the way people parted, but he heard the measured footsteps approaching, precise, familiar. When the secretary stopped in front of him, the terminal noise vanished completely, as if the power had been cut, letting Reverence take over. Barrett didn't say a word at first. She just removed her hat and saluted solemnly, not the kind for public photos. This was the salute for warriors, one she hadn't used in years, except at funerals. William slowly rose, steadying himself on the armrest, raising his other hand in return. Not out of reflex, but out of respect. "Sergeant Dalton," she said clearly, her voice like gravel wrapped in velvet. "You've been overlooked by this institution. That ends now." Behind her, her aides opened a sleek black government-issued case. Inside was a new velvet-lined box engraved with William's name on a brass plate and valor below, to carry valor quietly. She took the old TSA sealed box from his hands, opened it carefully, and with her gloved fingers transferred each piece of metal into the new display case. Every movement was reverent: the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, the Desert Storm campaign badges. Then the last one, his unit insignia forged in Saigon. Barrett held it a moment longer, her thumb brushing the edge. "My father wore one of these," she whispered. "He always said, 'Men like you built this country brick by brick and paid the price in silence.'" William didn't respond. He didn't need to. His eyes said it all. He stood still as she turned, holding the box, and addressed the terminal, not through a microphone, but with a voice that made people listen even if they didn't mean to. "10 minutes ago," she began, "a man who served this country with distinction was disrespected in this airport. Not by a crowd or a protest, but by a federal officer in uniform who forgot that respect isn't optional." The crowd grew quieter. Cell phones started recording. Passengers paused, boarding to listen. Across the room, Chad stood, frozen. Barrett's gaze swept the area slowly. This wasn't just about one man's medals. It's about the idea that military duty ends when the war does. The men and women who carry that burden somehow become invisible once they're in civilian clothes. Her voice deepened, grew heavier. Let this terminal remember something today. Metal doesn't shine because it's polished. It shines because of blood resilience and someone earning it inch by inch. She stepped aside as a Marine officer approached William and offered his arm. The secretary placed the new box in William's hands, then whispered, "Would you like to come with me?" They turned together, William on the Marine's arm, his hat pulled a bit lower. "Is the medal safe and worthy of them now?" And the crowd parted around them like water around a ship. No one moved to stop them. No one dared. Officers saluted. Passengers stepped back in silence, and behind them, Secretary Barrett paused only once at security. Her eyes found Chad still frozen and pale staring, and she said, not loud, but loud enough, "You don't touch what you haven't earned." Then she kept walking. A reckoning had come, and the air grew thick with it. Not violence, not anger, but truth. The kind of truth that lingers even after the footsteps fade. The kind that rewrites what people remember. Because that day in Terminal C, respect didn't come through ceremony or permission. It came deliberately. And from that moment on, no one looked at William Harris the same way again. William Harris didn't ask for applause as he walked through Terminal C, but he got it anyway. A hesitant clap started somewhere behind the desk. Then two more, then more, until it spread through the hall like a storm of realization. Each hand clap wasn't out of pity, but awakening. The old man they'd overlooked, the one with the quiet stance and the taped-up box. Now he was moving through the crowd, escorted by the Secretary of Defense and a Marine major at his side. The medal gleamed from a box engraved with his name in brass, not a barcode. The silence shattered, and what filled it wasn't noise. It was reverence. Folks stood up, airline staff, maintenance workers, even the jetway operator placed a hand over their heart. A young boy slipped from his mother and ran close enough to ask, "Are you a hero?" William, ever steady and humble, slowly knelt down. Bones creaking, caught his breath and said, "I served." Then he rose because heroes don't need explanations. As he reached the jetway stairs, the pilot stepped out of the cockpit to shake his hand, eyes misty, voice steady. "We'll hold the plane," he whispered. "Take your time." William nodded once and boarded slowly, but the story didn't end outside. The Secretary of Defense turned to the crowd and raised a hand, not for silence, but for remembrance. She said this country is always divided by how it treats its past. Some bury it, some stamp it out, but a few, men like this, carry it. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. He carries his fallen brothers the untold missions and years of silence most of us couldn't survive, let alone live with grace. And as his name fades from rolls, as his rank drops to whispers, he shows up because service isn't what you did, it's what you carry. The TSA supervisor arrived out of breath and pale, murmuring apologies, but it was too late. Chad, the agent who'd tossed the medals, stood at the back of the crowd, no longer smirking. His eyes followed the man he'd mocked, now honored by the very institution Chad served, without understanding. The secretary turned back and spoke to them, not harshly, but clearly. You can't judge what you haven't had the strength to do. She didn't need to name names. Everyone knew. Hours later, this story spread online. A veteran disrespected, honored, and reclaimed in the span of a terminal heartbeat. Videos flooded in from passengers, reporters, and even a Delta Gate agent who uploaded with the caption, "He didn't need a parade, just someone to see him." By nightfall, William Dalton was trending nationwide. Comments poured in like, "My granddad served with him. My dad wore that badge too. I've seen this man at my VA. He held the door for 10 people." But William himself didn't read any of it. He arrived in Washington the next day, saluted his brothers at Arlington, gave a simple speech that ended perfectly with just 5 words, "I'm proud to have served." And as he stepped down, he handed the case to a young private who hadn't seen real combat, but trained daily like one who had. "Keep it safe," William said. "You'll need it more than I do." Back at Southgate Airport, a small brass plaque now hangs beside the TSA checkpoint. No press release, no fanfare, just 4 lines etched in silence. Master Sergeant William Harris, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Vietnam War Desert Shield. Disrespected here, then honored as he deserved. Don't let this happen again. And if you ask anyone who was there that day, anyone who saw that quiet man pick his medal off the floor and hold it in both hands like a memory, too sacred to speak, they'd tell you it wasn't about justice, it was about recognition, because you can lose your title, you can lose your youth, but you never lose the right to be seen. And that day, William Harris was finally seen not as a burden, not as a relic, but as what he always was, a soldier, a leader, a living legacy. And he lived to see it.